Samsung Galaxy S24 5 months later. It is unbelievable that it's already been 5 months since the Galaxy S24 and S24 Ultra came out. It feels like yesterday, but no, I've had it for a couple of months. I've been able to try all of its features, all of its components, use it as my daily phone for a while, and of course compare it to its main alternatives. The S24 Ultra if you want to spend a little bit more money, the iPhone 15 in the same price range, and the iPhone 15 Pro, which I believe is the most similar alternative to the S24, even though it's a little bit more expensive. In this video, I'm going to compare it to all of those phones, but mainly what I want to do is to help you decide if the S24 Ultra is worth it after 5 months, or if it's not. Maybe you should get a cheaper phone, maybe you should get a phone from a different company. That's what I'm going to try to help you with in this video. And of course, as always, you have Amazon links with a discount for the S24 and for some of these phones down below in the description, just in case at the end of the video you want to check it out or buy it. As always, I want to start by talking about the exterior design. In this case, it is very, very similar to the one we got with the Galaxy S23. We have the same simple, minimalistic, and also very elegant layout on the back with the 3 cameras with, well, basically naked. In other phones, we have sort of like a camera bump or like a camera module to host all of the different camera components. In my opinion, it's going to be sort of like a timeless design that in 5-6 years is still going to look good, as opposed to other phones that try to be more extreme, try to be more complex, and sure, they are more flashy in the moment, but they tend to be repetitive, they tend to be boring over time. So I think Samsung made a really good decision here. As you can see, I have a very light gray color for the S24, but you can also find it in gray, in black, in orange, in yellow, in purple, in blue. There's a lot of colors to choose from, both from Amazon and normal stores, and then special colors from the official Samsung store. Since this is a 5-month later video, I want to touch on the durability of the phone. I mean, I've been using it for 5 months. I have been using it without a case or a screen protector, and I have to say, the phone holds up incredibly well. There is no scratches, no marks. As you can see, the glass is impeccable, even though as I said, I have been laying it down on desks. I've been using it without a case in my pocket, which usually tends to be problematic because it can scratch with keys or something, and usually that makes the screen start having a lot of micro scratches over time, but it is simply not the case. It is impeccable, and of course the side frames are also just brand new. There's no marks, there's no sides. If I cleaned it up and put it back in the box, nobody would notice it's been used by a human. It's perfect, in perfect condition. And as I said, even though of course I have not been using it for the 5 months non-stop because I have a lot of phones to try, I did use it as my personal phone for a while, like for about a month, and in that time I used it without a case, I used it without a screen protector, put it in my pocket, took it everywhere I went, and even then the phone is perfect condition. That said, I think nowadays that's what you would expect from a phone. They have very strong glass both at the back and at the front, and I mean it's the same thing I can say about the iPhone 15. It also looks pristine, and I've had it for even longer, so it's not a super special thing that's only going to, be the case with the S24. You're going to have a very similar experience with the iPhone and other phone companies like Xiaomi, but yeah, just so you know, it is not a fragile phone. You can use it without a case, and if you're careful, the phone is not going to, tear up over time. Something that really caught my attention here is that the S24, for some unknown reason, is a little bit bigger. It has a 6.2-inch display, and the S10 was 6.1 inches, and then the S21 was 6.2 inches, and then the S22 was 6.2, then they went back to 6.1, and now they're back to 6.2, so it's a little confusing. They just make the phones a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller for, unknown reasons every like 2 years, and well, it doesn't really add any functionality or take out any functionality. They're pretty much identical, but yeah, just so you know, it's a little bit bigger than the S23. I would say it's a little bit less comfortable because the S23 had slightly more rounded edges than the S24. Actually, this reminds me a lot of the iPhone 14. So you can see they both have very, very flat edges with pointy corners that, even though look incredible, I have to say this is one of my favorite design aesthetics with, it's very industrial, very minimal, the flat sides. They tend to be a little bit uncomfortable to hold because they sort of like push into your hand. Like the pointy corners, if you grab the phone with some force, they just tend to be a little uncomfortable. Something you should probably keep in mind. Probably one of my favorite features on the S24 though is that it has the same processor we have on the S24 Ultra, and this is something most companies refuse to do, like Apple, for example. They included last year's A16 on the 15 and the new A17 Pro exclusively on their Pro and Pro Max models. Or Xiaomi, or a lot of companies, they refuse to include the best of the best unless the phone is the best of the best and the most expensive. But Samsung just decided to include a Snapdragon Generation 3 on their $1,500 phone and a Snapdragon 8 Generation 3 on their $900 phone. So we're going to have pretty much the same performance on both of these phones, and that's amazing news. This phone feels incredible, both when you're just using it for day-to-day activities, navigating the system, and of course using more demanding apps. Of course, when you're playing casual games like Subway Surfers or any other, typical phone game, the performance is going to be stellar. It is going to be amazing. The phone works incredible. The game takes like 2-3 seconds to load up. It never fails. There's no bugs. There's maximum graphical fidelity, maximum visual fidelity, maximum frame rates. Everything works incredible. I don't want to sound repetitive, but yeah, the experience on casual phone games is I really don't know how it could get any better. And the experience we get with more demanding games like Genshin Impact or Call of Duty, even though it is still not top notch, like we still cannot play at ultra settings at 120 FPS, it is getting very, very close. With the S24, I actually have been able to play it at high settings and 120 FPS, which is insane. Like a couple of years ago, this game only ran at medium settings at 30-45 FPS on top tier phones. So the fact that we've gotten to a point where we get the same experience we get on a PC with a phone is remarkable. It's incredible, and it really says a lot about the future of phones. I feel like in the future we're going to be able to play console level games like we can start seeing on the iPhone on phones with no issue. Like we're going to be able to play the new Resident Evil, the new Call of Duty at high settings and 120 FPS on our phones that are in our pockets. That's insane. As you can see, the phone is running Android 14 and One UI 6.1, which right now are the latest version of Android and One UI, both. I think Android 15 is starting to roll out for Google Pixel phones, but it's not available on the S24, so I cannot really show you that operative system here, and it's not really that different from Android 14. But yeah, if you buy it right now, you're gonna get it shipped with this Android 14 One UI 6.1, and the experience is absolutely stellar. Like for the past couple of years, I don't really know how and why and what are they doing, but Samsung has been able to turn their launcher from a little bit of a mess that was kind of like not as smooth, not as premium as either naked Android or other launchers from other companies, into what I feel like is one of the best phone experiences, rivaling iOS, clean iOS on an iPhone, which is something I never thought I would see, because in my eyes 5 years ago, I thought, okay, so Apple's making the software, Apple's making the hardware, Apple's pretty much making everything on this phone so they can make it be as smooth, as optimized as possible. But comparing the performance and the experience I get with my iPhone 15 and my Galaxy S24, I have to say the S24 feels better. It is faster, it is more smooth, and even though neither of them gives me any issues or any bugs, I feel like the S24 is a faster feeling phone, partially because it has a 120Hz display, which we'll talk about later, but in a lot of ways, it's because the operative system just flies through, giving you absolutely no issues in the process. It's very well optimized. Quickly, I also wanted to touch on battery life on the Galaxy S24, and I want to talk about it from the perspective of someone that's trying a lot of phones. I have an iPhone 15 Pro, 15 Pro Max, 14, 15, S24, S24 Ultra. I've had a bunch of other phones in the past, and I can tell you that if you want the best battery life in the market, you're going to have to go for a big phone. There is a physical limitation in batteries right now in this 6.1-inch form factor that prevents these phones from getting any better. Like, even though I feel like the S24 is going to be better than iPhone 14 or the iPhone 15 Pro because it's a little bit more optimized, or it's a little bit better, they're not that different. I mean, all of these phones give you, I feel like, around 7 to 8 hours of decent normal use in a normal day. And the bigger phones like the S24 Ultra or the iPhone 15 Pro Max would give you 10 to 11 hours. If you buy a 6.1-inch phone right now, whether it is Apple or Samsung, whether it is the latest version or last year's version, you're going to have a very, very good experience and a very similar experience to any other 6.1-inch or 6.2-inch device. But anyways, let's move on to my favorite component on the S24. And it's not the best component. I feel like the best component on the S24 is the cameras, but my favorite component on this phone is the display, mainly because it has a 2600 nit brightness panel, which is absolutely insane. Back in the day, I think 2 years ago, Apple surprised the world with 2000 nits of brightness, which at the time was insane. Was like a super crazy evolution from 1200 nits, which was the standard back in 2021, 2020. Now Samsung is giving us 600 nits more. So if you're using your phone in an exterior space and you're facing the sun, you're just basically not going to feel any difference from using your phones indoors or at night. It's incredible. Beyond this, of course, it is a very good display, very similar to what we got last year with the S23, same resolution. We have the same top tier panel. You know, Samsung makes the panels on their phones, so they're always the best of the best. And of course, 120 hertz, which is not special. You know, it's a feature we have on pretty much every normal phone nowadays. But you know, when you compare it to its main rival, the iPhone 15, that doesn't have 120 hertz, it kind of becomes an advantage. I mean, the iPhone should have 120 hertz, but for the past 5-6 years, it has been stuck at 60. Apple refuses to include high refresh rate on their normal phone, and I feel like it's making a lot of people that maybe were in the fence between the 15 and the S24 going for the S24, because nowadays 120 hertz, it has become sort of like a standard. Every phone has 120 hertz. So the fact that the iPhone doesn't have it makes a lot of people, especially geeks and techies like me that appreciate those things, just not even consider this phone, because it just, why am I going to spend almost $1,000 on a phone that feels like it's from 2019? But anyways, let's move on to the most important component on the S24, the cameras. In this case, we have, as you can see, 3 beautiful cameras on the back. We have a 12 megapixel ultra-wide sensor, we have a 50 megapixel main sensor, and we have a 10 megapixel 3x telephoto sensor, which is very interesting because its main competitor only has 2 cameras, a 48 megapixel main sensor and 12 megapixel ultra wide. Its bigger brother has 4 cameras. It has the same 12 megapixel, 10 megapixel, and, well, not 50, 200 megapixel main sensor, but it also has a 5x telephoto. And if you want to find something similar, I guess, that's not the S24, you would have to go for the 15 Pro. iPhone 15 Pro has 12 megapixels, 48 megapixel main sensor, and 12 megapixel 3x telephoto. So it's the closest thing in terms of cameras I found to the S24. Here you have some samples of what you can achieve with the S24, but I feel like it's kind of repetitive. I mean, it's not that different from what we saw last year. We have insane levels of detail, even on interior spaces, which is probably the most mind-blowing thing about this phone. Because, you know, back in the day, you could take decent photos with a phone if you were outdoors, because the sensors on the phones were so small, you needed a lot of light to fill in the sensor and get a decent result. But nowadays, you can take very good photos in indoor spaces, and you're not really going to see that much noise. As you can see, we can barely notice that noise in like, what, 3000% zoom in a photo that was taken with very little light inside of my house. So it's very, very impressive. I'm actually very happy with the results that I've been getting with the S24, but it's really not that different in terms of quality from what we can get on an S23. What I feel like is the biggest selling point on the S24 is that it has a 3x telephoto as opposed to the iPhone. If you have an S23 or S22, you're not really going to notice that big of a difference. But if you're on the fence between these two, I feel like the S24 is the clear choice because it has, well, the same ultra-wide and main sensors, more or less, but it has one more camera, and it also has 8K video recording. It also has, let me show you, it also has a pro video feature that the iPhone doesn't have included on the main camera app, so you don't have to download a third-party app that probably charges you a monthly payment or something like that, and it's probably not as reliable as a first-party alternative like this. So yeah, ultimately I believe if you want to have the best camera possible and you're trying to decide between these two, the S24 is clearly the better choice. But anyways, going back to the sort of like the question that I wanted to answer in this video, is the S24 worth it 5 months later? Well, it is a very complicated question to answer because nowadays we have a lot of options in the sort of like high-end phone space. We have the Pro, the small Pro iPhone, the basic iPhone, last year's iPhone, the S24, we have the S23. There's a lot of choices, and they are all good choices. I don't think any of these phones is bad. Any of these phones is going to give you a bad experience. They're all great. But what I can tell you is that if you have an old Samsung Galaxy phone and you want to update to the S24, it is an amazing update and you're going to love it. If you're trying to decide between the S24 and the iPhone 15, I probably would go for the S24 and you're going to love it. And if you're trying to decide between getting the S24 now and waiting for the S25 next year, I would also encourage you to get the S24. It's going to be like, what, 7-8 months until we see that S25 phone. And it's probably not even going to be that different. So just get the S24 now. Enjoy it. It is an amazing phone. As I said, you have links for the S24 and some of these phones down below in the description, just in case you want to take a look or buy them. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.